There's a difference between 100 people who've received a link to a tutorial and 100 people who've sat with a person who've asked them,
Yeah.
what do you think you can build? This is
Yeah.
how it works. What questions do you have? Where you blocked?
Mm.
And getting their feedback in real time.
Welcome everyone to How Would You Build It? It's episode 21, and I'm very happy to be back. Rene, you've joined me. You left me alone for 2 weeks, but good to have you back. How are you doing?
Yeah, lekker man. It's good to be back from holiday.
Yeah, lucky. Some of us are lucky enough to get holidays, but it's good to have you back. And then Ben Blaine, good to have you. Thank you for joining today. How are you doing?
Thanks. I'm good. Thanks. I just got back from a trip to Spain. I tried out digital nomad remote working experience. Pretty tough.
Oh yeah.
Also, yeah, I went with two people who decided just before going to convert it from a digital nomad remote working experience like house to just being on holiday, and they took leave for the whole time.
Oh
So I
man,
felt very like guilty just sitting there on the couch every day, like on my computer.
Still grafting. The
Yeah,
passion is there, right? Still grafting
yeah.
hard. I'm jealous. It's fine. Some of us just keep working, during winter. It's fine. We'll just stay at home in the rainy Cape Town. But Ben, it's good to have you, and thank you for joining. I think what we're going to be talking today is quite an interesting concept, which is doing things that don't scale. I think Paul Graham is the one that made it famous, and you hear people talking about it.
Mm.
But you've been on the ground, you've bootstrapped, you've been around since the beginning of SnapScan. You've been there with OfferZen. You've done things like programmable banking with Investec. So you've got a lot of stories around, doing things that don't scale. Do you just want to share kind of how you built up that mantra approaching projects? Why go about doing things that don't scale?
So I think firstly, it's in my nature. I don't think very far ahead. I don't make plans really. Um, I kind of think like, where am I now, and where do I want to, what do I want to work on next? And often I don't know. Um, so I kind of like go outside. Like sometimes I just get in my car and drive somewhere, and like start meeting people, or go meet a friend and walk around with them, um, and that kind of stuff. Like last year or 2 years ago, I took a trip to Spain again because I wanted to see my friend Harry, and I was taking kind of a sabbatical year. So I like went to Spain, and then I was like, okay, well, while I'm traveling, I might as well do some other things as well. So my friend Kim was in Chile. She was like basically working her way alone through Chile, doing rock climbing and stuff. So I kind of hooked that up for a month. Um, and then after Chile, I was like, called a friend in San Francisco, and I was like, I want to see San Francisco because I haven't seen it. So can I come visit there for like 3 days? So I went to San Francisco, and I went to visit a friend in Texas. And then I was sitting on the couch in Texas, and I'm like, I'm out of things that I want to do. Those are the like four things. And I went to Yosemite as well. Those are like the five things that I want to do with my life. And I was like, it's almost like a year now, and I might need to start thinking about working again soon. And I was like, I really am. I'm so worried that if I just go back into this, I'm just going to get a job. I'm just going to get sucked into something that I didn't intentionally go after. This is the problem of doing the next thing.
Mm,
It's like you often get sucked along. Um,
mm,
so I just thought, okay, well, I was like, if someone calls me now and says, hey, will you come do this? And it's kind of a really low level job. What would be the most exciting job? What would be the one job I'd be like, I don't care what level it is, I'll come work there. And it was like SpaceX, basically. I was like, work at SpaceX. So if someone called me and said, come sweep floors at SpaceX, I would be like, cool, I'll do that for 3 months because I want to be around rockets. So I applied to a rocket launch company, and I got like a connect, but I didn't just apply. I updated my CV, looked at what jobs they had. I was like, cool, they've got an executive scrum position. I was like, I think that's like the one job on all their job list that I could maybe pull off somehow. Um, Wrote an application letter, updated my CV, kind of knowing in the back of my mind, I don't think I can work there as a non-US citizen, but I'm just going to do this because it's like it's a exercise in pursuing a dream. It's like this can't go wrong, basically. Complete fail would be like a win, basically. Even there would be a win in that. And I connected with 50 of their employees on LinkedIn, and I message everyone, and I'm like, hey, I love Astra. I love what you guys are doing. It's a rocket launch company that's competing with SpaceX. Um, and I didn't get in, but I made a post about not getting in and saying how I'd gone through this whole process. It really helped me to actually get excited about working again. It connected me with 50 plus people in the American like space industry, which is like just a dumb romantic dream of mine, was to work in space industry. And I made a post about this on LinkedIn. And this guy who I worked with 10 years ago, he's working at Western Sydney University monitoring satellites. And he saw that post and he said like, hey, and I'd also been sharing about traveling. He's like, I loved your post about traveling. And I love that you just kind of like did whatever you could to get into the space industry. We're actually monitoring satellites. We're not launching rockets, although they did launch something and put it on the space station. It's not like their business. And we've got this problem that we need to build something. We need to build a product, and we are researchers. Maybe we can chat, And I spoke to him about that, and he basically said he tried to work with developers. It was a shit show. Got rid of them. They showed up in their pajamas on Zoom calls, kind of thing. And I explained, well, I've worked with the development teams and helped them like get real world feedback and build product. So I can find developers, hire them, and get them to build this product. And that's what started Neurabuild, which is the current thing that I'm working on. And now with that university, we've done 4 other projects. In 1 year, we've already shipped 4 projects, and we're still working on the original one, Astrocyte. We're doing reading assessments for kids using speech recognition. We're doing hardware devices. We're building a hardware device that listens to koalas, counts koalas, and puts them onto a map, so you can do an ecological study. So there was a whole lot of fires in Australia.
Yes.
And the government's interested in studying the impact on koalas. So they've put out some money, which has gone into this university, and the university needs developers to actually implement some of the ideas that the researchers came up with, and take the research to a product level. So this is an interesting niche. I don't know if it's repeatable, but it should be. I'm like, this makes sense. There's millions of researchers out there spending billions of dollars finding important stuff out, and they like it seems so far only the ones that are engineers think, well, this could be a product, this could be a thing which I can build, this can be a machine, this can become a machine. Like most researchers just don't seem to think like engineers. They don't think like they're like, well, I found out this thing and it's done, and now we're going to find out the next thing. So it's not a completely new idea. I know there's a bunch of people working on this, and there's a bunch of systems that actually take in research and take it further. But it's something that I'm kind of passionate about now. I think it appeals to novelty, my seeking of novelty as well, like dealing with many things. So yeah, that's the current stuff, and that's like how that all got going. But that was like being honest with myself and saying, what do I want to do, and what is the next step? What is the next step that takes me closest to that? Yeah. And 4 months. One thing I want to add is 4 months before that, I actually joined a little a moon mining webinar where they were talking about moon mining, like mining the moon, like PhD level people. Open webinar.
Right?
You can just join it. You can ask questions about like some of the smartest people in the world discussing how to do moon mining.
Finding some gold up there.
Yeah, and that was actually the first step I took. I remember thinking, I want to do space and feeling so tense. I want to do space stuff. This is stupid. I want to do space stuff. That's stupid. I'm like, okay, just join a freaking webinar. I think my girlfriend actually said, just see if you can find a conference. Go to something. Like, get off the couch.
Really, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, Ben. So I think what stands out in that story is the fact that sometimes people can overthink things. When they start businesses and they think, how should I approach it? How do I launch this? How should I do it? And you were confronted with a problem and saying, okay, what do I do next with my life? And instead of trying to wait for the perfect solution, you're just like, okay, let me apply to this company, which sounds like something that could be interesting and something I enjoy. And because of that, a lot of other opportunities open up. And I think you've had similar experiences in when you the first early stages of a startup, you don't know exact path to get user adoption, but you try something, and then a lot of other things pop up. And those things become opportunities, and that becomes the path that you then walk. So instead of this perfect plan, just do something, try something, and iterate from there and be pragmatic. And I mean, and that's something I love about that story, is like you never planned to do work with universities, yet you ended up in a space now that you actually find really interesting and enjoy doing.
Yeah, exactly. I actually saw a graphic just before I joined this thing, which is it said intention without action is just a dot, and you've got your dot and like a destination or a flag. And then action without intention is just like this crazy scribble around
Yeah.
a dot. And then like action with intention is like this tiny step
Yeah.
towards a thing. So I think those are the things that have worked out for me. I'm a very much like an action person. But I can totally get stuck on that dot, just stuck on my couch.
Well, this is the thing, and that's what I want to kind of double down on, because I was in the background exposed to the Investec programmable banking project, and through subsidiaries or whatever, I was aware of what they were doing. And you said that you were able to sign up 100 people manually. So that's like not doing the thing around the dot, but actually saying, well, how many people do we need to sign up so that we can start getting adoption, right? And that's a cool way to kind of see, because we're talking about things that don't scale, yet it's actually it's a growth hack. Do you want to just explain the thinking around your approach to doing that and how it equates to growth?
Yeah, so I was pulled onto that project because Investec wanted to bank developers, and OfferZen understood getting developers basically to use something. We got developers to use OfferZen. We built developers by developers for developers. That was the whole mantra. So Investec came to us, and previously they've worked with South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, and if you're registered with SAICA, you can bank with Investec, kind of thing. And they have this kind of, you might not meet the standard Investec criteria, but if you're registered with SAICA, you can bank with Investec. So they were like, can we do that with OfferZen? Is there something like that in South Africa, the Institute of Professional Developers or something? And there wasn't. So that was the initial part of that project. Okay. And they were under the impression that developers, if given the opportunity to bank with Investec, would just say yes. And we were like, we know developers, like they're downgrading to like the cheapest bank account they can find, like Capitec 5 Rand.
Bank like, zero, let's go.
Basically, the more successful the developer, the cheaper their banking.
That's hilarious.
But we had launched Root as like a sister company. Well, no, not us, but Low Hopley had launched Root as a developer bank a few years before, and they had lots of interest in that. And he had just hit a wall at around 200 customers. Like, banking is hard and complexity scales like horribly, basically, and it's very scary. Like, you lose people's money, possibly going to jail, kind of thing. So, and they got a great opportunity to pivot to insurance and to build developer tools for building insurance, which is having much more impact now. So we started engaging Investec, we educated them all about developers. They came to our offices, they met our team, they were like, got inside the mindset of developers. OfferZen's team lives and breathes the developer mindset. The developer is centric to everything they do. They ask, how does this make the developer's life better, was a question that we asked in every meeting. So at the time I was busy with some other special projects at OfferZen, but things kind of got to a point where they had an outline for a partnership between OfferZen and Investec to help Investec bank developers. And part of that was a 2-day hackathon with the Root team to see, can we make an Investec account programmable? And instead of building the entire suite, can we just build a card where you can upload JavaScript to an online IDE, and every time you make a card transaction, it runs the JavaScript. It literally just runs JavaScript when you swipe your card, and it can call out, and it has access to the variables, the card variables. And the only control it can do is block the transaction. So with that little tiny cornerstone piece, I was essentially, I think at that point I was handed the project and told, like, work with Investec now and like do this partnership thing with them. So there was a plan, but I basically said, well, I think you need to build the programmable banking thing out and make that available to customers, because that will attract developers. Doing a real thing that empowers developers will attract developers. Otherwise, it's very hard to differentiate yourself and to convince people to pay 600 Rand a month for an account. So I went out and I flew to Joburg to meet developers. I reached out to developers who I knew, who were on OfferZen, who I had relationships with. And I said, this is what Investec's offering. Are you interested? Mostly no. Well, not no. It was like, sounds great. Sounds very interesting. Private, it sounds like a wonderful service. Private banker, call them up 24/7, fast service. But it's more of like when I'm like stuck on the phone for 40 minutes, then I want Investec. I'm not sure now, I'm like, have to go pick up the kids. I'm not sure if I want Investec right now. So I was like, okay, and if we add like this API stuff, will you be interested? And we got like a kind of 10x more people said they would give it a bash if it had the API stuff. Cool. So we had 50 people on record, roughly 50 people saying, and I had 600 pages of notes because I take basically transcript notes when I sit with people, and then put that into sheets, and you can spot trends. And I had like 25 pain points that developers had with their existing banking.
Amazing.
Can't get CSVs in the wrong format, too much interest on my debt, blah, blah, blah. 25, this is a pain, this is a pain, this is a pain. And so I had this like 1 page of pain points as well that we were kind of thinking around. We launched programmable banking collaboration at the OfferZen merge conference in 2019. Like, it's on Milan's account. It can't be deployed to any other account. It's hasn't been passed through legal. There's like some random prototype on one person's account. But that's a hook in. That's like there's something there. It gives you something to chase when you come back at the start of the year and you're like, oh, what next? You've got a foot in the door. It's both sides.
Yeah.
And so that drives your motivation. And so we got it through legal. Then we kind of said, okay, can we give it to my account now? I signed up for accounts, so I went through the account signing up process. Got it on my account, ironed out all the bugs, figured out it wasn't on, so switched it on. It had gone off during the holidays, so we switched it back on. Got the developers to our office. We were like, well, let's build an app on top of it. Oh, it's off. Okay, well, can you switch it on and we'll come back tomorrow? Okay, next day it's on. Okay, great, it's on now. So like, let's build the app today because now it's on. And then they spoke to developers on our side, and they were like, what was crazy was some of them have been working at the bank for more than 10 years, and they were like, that's the first time we've spoken to a customer. They've only ever seen BI tickets come through, and they'd never spoken to a customer. So I was like, okay, wow, that's insane.
But isn't that normal for developers? Like, developers don't get access to customers. That's taboo.
Yeah, I mean, that's not what I'm used to, because that's my whole career has been based on going to customers and telling the developers, like, the customers have these 25 pain points. Like, what are we going to do about it? Like, it changes the game in terms of drive.
Yeah, I get really annoyed when I work with teams that don't allow access for the development team to have exposure to what the pain points, why they're building something. Well, it's like such a foreign concept. It does my head in. Anyways, carry on.
So, okay, cool. So we finally got it live. We got it running on business banking, got it running on my account. We could add a new person. We had it signed off by legal. That was about 1 or 2 months in to the new year. And I was like, okay, we can sign up people. And I'm sitting with 50 people that have said yes for this. And I know this is going stale. In December, they said yes. It's now February. I'm like, let's fucking go. Like, why is it not live? Every day I woke up and I called people and I'm like, hi, do you know why it's not live? Or like, what do we need to do next? And, I didn't even know we had to get it through legal. That was just something. And I was like, suddenly I had to become a semi-lawyer, basically. And you just kind of just ask the person that's in front of you, what do we need to do next? Basically, who do I need to speak to next?
Compliance,
etc. And yeah, so we got it live, and then I was like, okay, cool. Now we'll just call up the people that I spoke to, that I understand their pains, that I flew to see, and say, hey, it only blocks transactions on your card, but it's a foot in the door, and you will be part of helping us to make programmable banking a reality in South Africa. It's something that could change South Africa, is giving South African developers the ability to code bank accounts. It means that new startups could be built. It means that problems inside businesses can be solved. It means that if you get your business to switch to programmable, to business banking, you don't have to go, you can just solve your own problems, basically. And that was the original idea, is that developers would come to Investec for this. They would solve their own problems. They would realize they could solve their business's problems. They would tell their business, you can use. And that has worked. We've seen that work multiple times. So it's a long play. So then it was 100. So then it's calling these people and getting them to switch to Investec, basically, talking them through what the process would be. getting a yes or a no out of them. If it's a no, that's also useful, getting the feedback. And then connecting them with a private banker who puts on their account and gets programmable banking activated. So it's quite a manual onboarding process at Investec, because you need to meet your private banker, you need to meet your support person as well, and you need to understand all the services that they offer. And then once programmable banking was switched on, I would get a notification and I would set up a meeting with the person. And on the call, I would like walk through, I would log into internet banking with them. I would show them the IDE. This isn't like send them a tutorial, like zero freaking engagement if sending a tutorial. This is like, we're going to go on a call, we're going to go in the IDE. Here, I'm going to send you some code, put this code in. We're going to run a transaction. Look, it blocked the transaction. Okay, now take the code off, do the transaction. Look, the transaction goes through. That's how you block a transaction.
Okay,
you can explain this to a person in 30 seconds and they'll be like, oh yeah, cool. Okay, I'm going to go fetch the kids, you know. Doing that 20 minutes of walking them through, this is how you run it. Suddenly they're like, honey, can you go fetch the kids? Or I'm going to sit here. I've just got like a million ideas right now. I'm going to like build like 5 apps today. You know, that's the difference. And there's a difference between 100 people who've received a link to a tutorial and 100 people who've sat with a person who've asked them, what do you think you can build? This is how it works. What questions do you have? Where you blocked? You know, and getting their feedback in real time. So we built the community around that, and we had a weekly meetup based on those people. And I just basically said, okay, cool. You've sat with me. Come to the weekly meetup now. And every week, 2 people are going to show what they've built. And we just ran that basically for like 40 weeks or something. And we had like 50 apps built and shown in the community with open source code shared.
So it's interesting because it's like you're putting in the time, which seems like you say, things that don't scale. You're putting in the time, but once you've unlocked there's the tipping point that Renier even mentioned. Like once you get a tipping point, then people start kind of going, oh, this is what it's doing. Renier, why is it that a lot of startups and founders and teams don't take that approach and they go scale first? Like, why is it that mindset there?
I think the first thing is like, you know, if you set out and do something, you kind of have to map out the steps, right? You're thinking, I'm doing this because I'm building towards a specific point. And then when you actually go out and pitch this to someone and you go, cool, use this to Ben's example, like, you know, why don't you join this banking thing? This is what we're going to do. And you get a no, it kind of it's like a punch in the face, right? And if you're not battle ready, if you're not used to getting punched in the face 100 times, you know, it's really uncomfortable. So I think that's the biggest thing is like you have to understand that in the, you know, even the best startups, the ones that have been the most successful, and you know, I think SnapScan, Ben can speak to that in a moment, but like it isn't like when SnapScan started, nobody knew what SnapScan was. They didn't even know that they needed it, right? So you go out and you put this app out and you think it's awesome and it's going to do something, but you get punched in the face 100 times, people thinking this is the stupidest thing ever. And then a few months later, everybody's talking about SnapScan as if they were all on board from day one. And I look at those stories and, you know, I've seen in some of the stuff I've been building as well, is almost nothing changed from the first time you pitched something to someone. Yet now all of a sudden they think it's cool, whereas a few months ago they didn't. And having to go through that process of actually getting the punches in the face and getting the setbacks and getting the no's and taking that and working that instead of getting discouraged, that's a very important thing. And actually the trick is in the step before it. A lot of people avoid doing that because they anticipate the punch they're gonna get, and it's as if they do before they actually go into the punch, right? And when they do that, they never get out there and they never learn the nuances and the intricacies that's needed to actually get the kind of adoption and get to that tipping point.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Ben, you mentioned something when we were chatting about setting this up. You were talking about doing this in parallel, right? So it's not like you're doing this and nothing else is happening over there. You're actually trying these things that don't scale while something is happening in the background. Something's being built and you're doing these things, right?
Yeah, it depends on your setup. So with SnapScan, it's a bit different because we had a dedicated dev team. So that's like, oh crap, we've got like 4 developers sitting there twiddling their thumbs and solving made up problems. Twiddling their thumbs and or solving made up problems. Um,
Oh, I love that.
and we need someone to go out there and create real problems, like
Yeah.
for real people that
Mm.
actually exist. So that's a bit different because Investec was like the developers are like running digital banking. They, but nothing's going to happen unless we also get them in front of a real customer. So actually, it's kind of the same problem. It's just with SnapScan, it's a bit more pressure because they don't currently have something keeping them alive. So that's why I think in startups it's harder and easier because there's like more motivation for everyone to get stuck in. I think, and what Rainier was saying as well now, it just made me think, do things that don't scale. Well, it depends how you look at that. Like maybe the technology doesn't scale or the operations don't scale, but the idea kind of scales, like the movement, the social movement of SnapScan, the idea scaled, like seeding a bunch of people with a good experience, telling them I'm Ben, you can call me, this is my number, you can call me any time of night today if any of your money goes missing, and I'll do whatever I can to get it back. And we're in Techno Park, like you can drive there, this is our address, you can find us, because they're like, what is this SnapScan thing? We like, they've never seen a smartphone, they're a shop owner, never seen a smartphone, never seen a QR code, don't understand how banking works at all, has never seen a person that builds the people, like they're just like, there's a bank and then there's bank branches. They don't understand there's all this infrastructure that you can actually change as well.
Yeah. I think people don't realize where things were when SnapScan was born, right? Like online banking was still so new. Like tell your mother about.
You were still swiping credit cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Uber was like, I think maybe a little bit after SnapScan. So that was like kind of what drove this acceptance, this behavior of like putting your credit card details into a phone until the point where, but anyway, what Renee was saying made me think like you've got to kind of create the social acceptance, and that starts with early evangelists. There's a bunch of people out there, probably like 1% of people who are going to hear your idea and they're going to be like, I had that idea and you're building it. That's freaking awesome. And they like basically think that they work at your company. Like we literally had people who would like call us and be like, hey team, like, and and this is the idea of.
I think I was one of the first 10 users of SnapScan in Techno Park at Small Pop.
And that's a really beautiful time if you actually do this product market fit stuff, if you actually do it in the real world, you actually get 5 beta users, you get 10 beta users. It's like a really intimate experience. You're both like birthing this. You're like you literally are changing the world. Like you're changing how things are done. You're changing how things do like happen. But it's only 1% of people that have that appetite, and they love it. And you get those people, and then the early evangelists tell the early evangelists kind of speak to the early adopters and say, hey, you should try out the SnapScan thing. And you and so that's what happened with SnapScan as well, is I would hit these pockets of early evangelists. We were like, restaurants, amazing idea. You go to a restaurant, you get the code on your bill. Don't wait for the card machine, just scan and leave, cool. Take a week, set up a restaurant, explain it have meetings with the board of the restaurants, like freaking the grandfather who still owns the restaurant and his like whole family works there, and you have like multiple board meetings about implementing SnapScan and like safety things, and you put it in the restaurant, and like people come and sit down in the first night, and I was there in this restaurant which we launched it, and people get this code, and kind of very awkward, like no one's using it. So I like go to people and I'm like, hey, if you pay your bill with SnapScan, this QR code thing here on the restaurant, I'll give you a 25 Rand voucher. And they like, what's SnapScan? Okay, what's this thing? And you like, add your card and you can now pay with your phone. And they were like, well, why would I do that? I can just pay with my card. And it's like, well, then you don't have to ask for the card machine. So, but I have to download an app and it's like way easier to ask for the card machine. And it's like, oh shit, okay, this doesn't work at all. Complete fail, flop. You have to go back to the team and be like, this thing which I've been telling you is going to be great. We'd have 0 data. We just basically learned this thing doesn't work. We just lost a week. Like you guys might not have jobs now because I did this thing basically.
Yeah, debunked.
Versus coffee shop, hey, we're going to move to Cape Town. So go to Cape Town and like scout out some some places. Call up my brother-in-law and like, what's some cool places in Cape Town? Deluxe Coffee Works in Ridderheck Street. Like, where are the cool places? This is the thing that people don't ask enough. Like, where do people like where are like people alive and awake and trying new things, basically?
I like that.
Receptive to things. So go to Deluxe Coffee Works, Ridderheck Street, Cape Town, next to Amazon, where people are coming in and they're forgetting their wallet at work, and they've got the latest smartphone. They know what technology is. They understand what infrastructure is. They understand that, you know, startups. They've heard of startups before. They're grabbing a coffee 2-3 times a day from this place to escape the office. And now there's a guy there who they can talk tech with. His name's Ben, and you can talk tech with this guy. I can take his number. He's telling me about mobile payments, about the psychology that if like I pay with a card, you're taking my money, but if I pay with a phone, I'm giving you money. So paying with a phone feels like cash. It actually feels better to me at a base level in like deep, like lizard brain psychology. And I can have conversations with this guy on WhatsApp and like pay, and I can send him and like, fuck, it didn't work today. Like, what's the problem? Oh no, don't worry, I'll chat to the developers. Oh my word, it's working again. Fuck, you're a legend. I'm going to get everyone in the office to use this. It's the Airbnb thing of like, you know, what's a 5-star experience? It's like I arrive at the Airbnb and everything's fine. What's a 6-star experience? It's like blah blah blah. Like, what's a 10-star experience? Well, the Beatles are playing when I like land at the airport. What's an 11-star experience? Elon Musk is in the. I mean, that's a bit ridiculous because it's not real. I didn't like it much when I heard it. I was like, aha, but in a way, it's like just speaking to someone who's amped and doing something and changing the world and being able to be a part of that is very appealing to people at an early stage. And those people make or break whether your thing gets off the ground. You need a little army of. I mean, it starts with 5 people. You know, at the first meetup for programmable banking, it was me, Stephen, who works at OfferZen, and 1 person. There were more people that worked at OfferZen than there were people that had the product in the meetup. And we were like, okay, well, what should we do? We were like, let's make a spreadsheet where we post all of our transactions to the spreadsheet so we can see what we're all buying. And it's like, this makes no sense. This is like surveillance state shit, but it's so funny. Let's just do it. And then like everyone was addicted to the spreadsheet for a while. And like, that's what drove people, that got people using the product. It's just like, you can't have this irrational thinking if you're like thinking about what happens if 1,000 people do this. Just like, you've got 1 person. What happens if 10 people are doing it? What happens if you have 10 people? That's awesome. And if 10 people are doing this, it's fine. You know, if we have 20 stores on SnapScan and there's $1 million in the bank and we lose R1 million, well, when we lost R1 million, we have to go give those people R1 million somehow. And like, it's not the end of the world. Just like make sure you have R1 million.
So have you been part of a project?
Like, don't have KYC. Just sign everyone up with your ID number. The first 100 stores had my ID number for their SnapScan account because it took too long to sign them up. They were bored. They were just like, I'm not going to sit here and listen to this. Just give me the code and connect. I was like, give me your bank account number. I'd convinced them. I was like, give me your bank account number. Here's a QR code. Don't worry. If people come here and scan this, you'll get money. That was the sign up process. And then when our CEO discovered that, he was like, oh my God, we're going to jail. And we had to like go. But you know, do you want a dead company or do you want KYC at a scale of 100, you know?
So have you been part of a project where you took this approach and it actually failed, or you realized that this project was not going to take off? Like, you've done everything you can, you've done all this things that don't scale and it just didn't work?
Mixit Money was the precursor to SnapScan, and Mixit Money was connecting FNB e-wallet, instant money from Standard Bank. So if I send you a cash voucher on Standard Bank, like go into internet banking and I send you my mom or something back home a cash voucher, she goes to the ATM, she puts in the voucher code, she gets 500 Rand cash, she gets mugged. It's a shit show. It's a horrible experience all around. Instead, I can send her 500 Rand cash voucher and that a balance would appear in Mixit. She can buy 100 Rand electricity on Mixit. She can buy 100 Rand airtime on Mixit. We just basically displayed the cash voucher as a wallet in Mixit, as a wallet balance. It was actually a wallet. The infrastructure behind it was actually a wallet. It was based on Exemption 17 regulation, which had been put into law in that year, which we launched it. But yeah, we got to 200,000 registered users.
Sure.
through the Mixit platform.
Wow.
And I mean, it kind of died along with Mixit, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we had a joint venture there, and it was 50%. And the guys who went into the joint venture with us, because this became one of the most successful projects on Mixit, that when they did when they bought that survey that I spoke about before we started recording, that they based their decision to buy Mixit on those survey results.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I mean, Mixit just along with Microsoft and Steve Ballmer and the rest of them just totally underestimated how quickly smartphones would happen, and that smartphones would become a majority. All the predictions were said that smartphones would be 20%. They were like all the graphs were like, oh, it'll grow to 20%, and then it will plateau, and it will always be a niche thing.
It's kind of like AI will only take 20% of the job, so Ben.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of died along with Mixit, because Mixit didn't transition to smartphone or whatever. They didn't beat WhatsApp, so Mixit died. And we got bought out of that joint venture because they weren't comfortable with us having so much ownership over something that we made through our own effort. But yeah.
I don't think people talk about Mixit enough. It's like the OGs of the industry. Like everyone was around and exploring and playing with Mixit and trying to build in it. It seems like that little generation of people. I love hearing war stories. I wasn't around for it, but I love hearing stories from the Mixit days, and people can realize how old our actual industry is of building tech products in South Africa.
Yeah, there was some amazing things figured out at Mixit. I'm actually working on a project now with Gavin Marshall, who was one of their initial developers of Mixit. It's quite fun. Yeah.
So I want to kind of start wrapping up, but one of the thing is like, so Ben, while you're learning all these things, and Rania, jump in here at any point, but while you're learning all these things that don't scale and you're learning from the market, when do you know that it's time to go to your team, your development team, whether they're there or not, and say, okay, guys, this is what I've learned. This is what I need you to build. What does that process look like? So you've done all these things that don't scale, and now you're pretty sure of what those pain points are. Now what?
If you read the Mom Test, which is a great book on doing this, I think he's probably put a lot more thought into making this into a repeatable model. He's like, he's got a whole shorthand for writing notes, and then you make little like symbols, which says this is a bug, this is a feature, this is a customer segment, this is a thing. And he's got a whole lot of tricks, like to discover whether you actually have uncovered value. You can ask someone at the end of a meeting, will you pay? Can I send you a bill? Can you sign up for this thing now? Like if we don't have a product yet, can I send you a letter of intent to be one of our first users at 500 Rand a month or whatever? Or if you're not willing to sign up, can you post about this on social media? Or can you introduce me to a friend? Or if you're not willing to do that, would you mind like testing out our product and giving us some feedback? So these are real things which cost people reputation, money, or time. And that's one way of litmus testing whether or not you've actually got adding any value, because no one's going to give you anything if you're not adding value. They might speak to you because they like, but you're selling something else. You're selling speaking to me. They might learn something from that. They might, make a connection. They might build their network. So that's like one thing to test. Actually, I forgot what the question was, but how do you translate it back to developers? Yes. So that's one way. Exactly. Like, yeah, read the Mom Test like 5 times, and watch Steve Blank and the Lean, and read the 4 Steps to Epiphany if you want to dig a bit deeper. But there's tons of information there. But basically, what it says is like, ask people what they want in the product, and write it down and give it to the developers. Okay. or create a situation in which people are fucked. Like, I'm trying to pay at the shop, it's not working, it's canceling. Like I'm like standing in the shop with you, and I'm calling the developer saying like, hey, John's at the shop, or John messaged me, he said he's at the shop, he can't pay, and like it'll be fixed so magically fast you won't believe it. Like things will just so create that build, measure, learn, like create a living organism basically that has sensors. It's like, and I don't know any other better way to do that than just to be the freaking eyes, ears, nose, mouth of the thing for the first 100 customers. Like that's the only things I've ever been involved in. Like I have been that, along with maybe other people, or just alone, being the eyes, ears, mouth, nose of the customers to the developer. And ideally you want to filter it a bit, but if not, just torrent it through and they will filter it. But like over time, it's better to get better at synthesis. It's better to not just send your raw notes. It's better to type up, today I went to the shop and these were the 5 things that were bothering people. And when you don't need to tell people what to do, you just share the pains and the problems. Developers will solve that stuff. Like it's magic for them. It's to actually get that customer feedback. When we sat with the Investec developers, they were like, oh, if our customers are developers, we don't need to do X, Y, Z because they're developers. They can just do that. We can just give them the endpoints which we have.
Yeah.
And they were like, but then what are we supposed to do? Like, what do we do? I'm like, don't worry, there'll be stuff for you to do. Don't worry. Like those endpoints will break. Like and like you'll have access issues and you'll have weird questions and people will hack around protocols and they'll call the things a million times and you'll have to fix other problems. Just like expose your customers to the developers. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. Rainier, any last takeaways in like kind of this whole idea and concept?
Yeah, it's just something that just stood out all throughout this conversation, and Ben, over the previous time we had a coffee and a juice in Stellenbosch, it was similar. Like, when you speak to a lot of different founders, like sometimes their focus is in different places, and I know focus is important when you're a founder, but the focus gets pulled in different directions because of the different demands and different things. Like you need to raise funding, so you need to look this way, and you need to attract a good team, so you need to present that and this. And what I love about speaking to Ben and about this conversation, it's really just obsessing about solving a problem and solving a problem practically with the next step that is most likely to solve that problem. And the next step that you put forward is most likely not going to solve it, but it's going to open up 5 other opportunities that could potentially solve it. So, and continuously obsessing about this next step instead of all these other things and all the startup theater that can so easily come into play, you actually make the kind of progress that sets you up to be successful. And
I think
so practical.
I think also it makes me think of one thing in that maybe people put salespeople in sales positions at early startups, and it's like there's like it's possibly true that like you just need an engineer to build a startup and you need an engineer to do sales, basically, because they will understand, they will approach the problem like an engineering problem, not a sales problem or a CEOing problem. And
because
you need to build a machine, basically. You need to build a machine and you need to understand systems engineering.
Yeah, you need to understand, you need to figure out what you're actually selling, and that's not a sales process. That's more of a engineering, logic, common sense problem.
Yeah. I can stand in front of a customer and understand, okay, we don't need to talk about that. We can just that thing, we can solve it with code. That thing, okay, that thing we're going to need like an emailer. That thing we're going to need a form. That thing we're going to just, that's a data science problem. And I can translate these things in real time, but I'm talking to like Tani X, well, I can't think of it off. Tani something at Tani at the Nelspruit Anybos festival. She's like my QR code keeps blowing over or something. So
yeah, I think that, that's definitely one of the big takeaways for me. Is actually, I've always felt it, but actually going and figuring out the problems, double downing on finding out what they are, and then try and talk dev. Like actually speak to your developers and make sure they're as close to the problem as possible, so that you're building the right thing. Because it's really depressing when you don't have that and people are building, what you said it so nicely earlier, just you're building things that don't actually solve anything. I can't remember how you worded it, but yeah.
I know we're way over time, but I wanted to go back to the weekend market story. So I try to say this super quickly. First weekend at a weekend market, we were like, this is the gold mine because there's no card machines here. It's before Yoko and all that stuff. So we're like, we're going to clean up here. This is going to be like slam dunk. We get there. Everyone's like, hard no. I don't want this thing. I'm like, I'm going to give you 25 Rand vouchers. Every single person at this market's going to have a 25 Rand voucher. We're like 2 people to sign up the first weekend. And it's because they don't want to be recorded electronically, their income, for tax purposes. They're just like avoiding tax, basically. So it's like, but I'm like, okay, but you can literally like increase your possible takings from a weekend. You can sell out if you have SnapScan. And so 2 people took it. I gave everyone who came to the market a 25 Rand voucher to download SnapScan and to use SnapScan. That also helped. And then I just said, like, those 2 stores, just go first to those 2 stores. So basically those 2 stores got like a free sales agent with giving away free money. And the next weekend, 10 people were waiting for me and to sign up because they were like, Ben sells our stuff. Like when we sign up to SnapScan, it comes with a free salesperson and like a funnel of money. And so then the next weekend, and half the market was like, we need to boycott this. And then the other half was like, Ben, just get me Ben. Like he's the guy who's just gonna sell all my fucking soap. Okay. And or my fudge or whatever. And so the next weekend, those 10 guys like did crazy sales, and now it's buzzing at the market. Like a bunch of people are using this thing. There's arguments like, I'm not giving my phone details, my card details. Oh, you're such a stuck up, like get involved in those arguments, put people against each other. Like it's a social dynamic thing. Third weekend, it's like market's completely signed up. The ATM goes down. Everyone's like, give me SnapScan now. Give me SnapScan now. The ATM is down. No one can draw money. And like, so you need like, yeah, it's like in 3 weeks that went from like a complete fail to just a wipeout, as we originally thought.
Yeah.
And I was asking the development team, they were trying to build like banking stuff. Oh my gosh, it's going to be banking stuff. And I'm like asking them for like little features for like weekend flea markets. They want to add, you know, this and that. They want to have, I don't know what, I can't even remember, like a logo, or I need like an FAQ in the app or something. And they were like, oh, why are you bugging us with this like low level crap? And I'm like, okay, fine. You guys run the market. Like you go. And so they came to the second weekend because they couldn't understand why I got no signups. And they were like, holy crap, this is a for real situation.
I love that story so much. I really love that story.
Yeah. And they were like, okay, Ben, we can see like what you're dealing with here. Like we're gonna help. We're gonna fix.
We're building the frequently asked questions.
Yes, and like and I don't know what it was. It was probably something to do with the voucher system. It like was clunky or something, like giving people vouchers. At the start, we had 25 Rand if you sign up for SnapScan. Those things all help. Those things are
yeah, I love it. It's being close to the problem, being close to the customer, and actually understanding the problem. I love that. That's the biggest takeaway. Ben, I'd love to hear more stories, but we're running out of time. This was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing them with us. And we'll be looking out for Neurabuild and what your story holds, eh?
Cool. Thanks. That was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Cheers.
All right.
Cheers.